All right, welcome to 2021 where the great toilet paper shortage is over. I sure hope so. But I'm going to use this roll of toilet paper to show you how to measure a roll of vinyl, or maybe something that hopefully in the future is much more valuable than toilet paper. Maybe your wrap vinyl, something like that, and understanding how much is left. So the first thing that we need to understand is what is circumference. Just so it's clear and out of the way, circumference is the length around the outside of a circle. Okay, so I've drawn this line where the toilet paper starts there. If I unwrap this toilet paper here, where that line is from between my hands there, that is the circumference of the outside of this circle. So how do we calculate circumference? Well, pretty easy. We take diameter, which is the widest part of the circle. If you just make a line straight across, the widest part is going to be the diameter, and you can use a set of calipers to calculate that. Do it all in probably inches, or just make sure your measurements are consistent. But we take that diameter times 3.14, or diameter times pi, and for some reason that's going to give us the circumference of the circle. So somebody with a math-based channel can explain why that works, but anyway, it's true. So we want to measure the outside diameter of this circle, then we want to measure the inside diameter of this circle, okay? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is they'll grab their calipers and they'll use those inside claws there, and they'll measure the inside of the core and they type that number in. Well, the inside of the core doesn't really tell us anything. What we really want to know is how long the material is sitting on top of the core. And so that's the first wind around the outside of the core that we need to know. So you're going to need to wedge your calipers in there and kind of get the measurement of the outside of that core, and that can vary. So the inside is usually pretty consistent with a 3-inch core if you're in the sign business, but the outside can vary depending on the thickness of the material that they're the thickness of the cardboard that they're using. So take your calipers and measure that diameter there and multiply that by 3.14 and get your circumference on the inside there. Now the next thing we need to measure is the thickness of the material. So I'll use my calipers and I'll measure the thickness of the material. Now do not use the factory provided specifications for this. Grab your calipers and measure it. So a lot of times the factory provided specifications will only give you the thickness of the vinyl, because after it's installed, that's all that matters. But while it's on the roll, we need to know the thickness of the adhesive and the thickness of the liner, most importantly, with all of this. So take your calipers and measure that thickness. And then the last thing we're going to do, you could calculate this using the diameters that you just measured, but I find it's easier to just use your calipers and measure the thickness of the material on one side of that roll like that, okay? And so what that tells us is if we measure this thickness here, and then we know the thickness of the vinyl, so each one of these winds of vinyl, then we can divide that out. So let's say this is 2 inches, and this vinyl is 2/100ths of an inch thick, for example, then that would tell us that there's going to be 100 winds around that core. Does that make sense? So take that thickness there, divided by the thickness of the vinyl, and that'll tell you how many times this vinyl wraps around this core. Okay, remember, we're only working with one side of it, so just measure just that side. Don't like add them both up. Don't make that mistake. Okay, so now we know how many times that vinyl wraps around that core, okay, and we need to know how long it is wrapping around that core. Well, this is the part that actually confused me at first, and then I realized that we don't really need to know how long each one of these winds is. We just need to know what the average length of the winds are. Well, we can calculate that really easily because we know the longest one and we know the shortest one. So add up the longest circumference and the shortest circumference and average them, divide them by 2, okay? And then whatever that number is times the average, it will give you the average length of the wind times the number of winds that you have, tells you how much material is on that roll. So I've made a calculator for you where all you have to do is measure the thickness of the material, the outside diameter of the core, and the inside wind, or the inside diameter of the core. Not the inside of the cardboard again, but the first wind, the diameter of the first wind. You plug those 3 numbers into the calculator at firesprint.com/tools, and it'll do all the math for you. But that is kind of what's going on under the hood. I really hope that made sense. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if it did or didn't make sense, or if there's a better way to explain it that you know of, or you want me to go into more detail on this topic. I'm happy to do that for you. But this was a 5-minute video explaining some pretty simple math, so I think I'm going to cut it off there. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.